Sue Jones and Sarah Keaton. Sarah Keaton, anybody else at all? No?
Councillor Francesco O'Brien.
You're going to be late. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fine. Right. For the benefit of those who are online, can I ask those in the Gloucester room to introduce themselves so that people know who's in the meeting? I'm Peter Black. I'm the chair of the committee, and I'm going to go to my right to Sam here first. Next.
Afternoon, Samantha Woon, Democratic Services.
Lyndon Jones, Bishopston Ward.
Debbie Smith, Legal Advisor.
Councillor Wendy Lewis, Wenaloedd Ward.
Sarah Lackenby, Head of Digital and Customer Services.
Councillor Andrew Lewis, Deputy Leader, Swansea Council and Lead Cabinet Member for both items on the agenda today and Chair of the Public Service Board.
Roger Thomas, Chief Fire Officer of Middle West Wales Fire and Rescue Service and Deputy Chair of the Public Service Board.
Thank you very much, everybody. Hopefully everyone knows who's here now then. Great. Disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest. Does anybody have any interest they wish to declare at all? What's that? Oh, Sam Pritchard. Sam.
Yeah, just to note, Chair, that I'm a member of the Mid and West Wales Fire Authority. So I'll declare that as a member of the Public Service Board.
Okay, I'm not sure that actually needs to be happened, but that we'll make a note of that, Sam. Thank you. Anybody else?
In that case, I am a member of the Mid and West Wales.
Okay, and Lyndon too. Okay, you have to fill a form in now. Okay, thank you, everybody. Prohibition of whip votes and declaration of party whips. Looks around quickly. No. And then item 4, minutes of the last meeting to approve as a correct record. Motion relating to the scrutiny of active travel and the scrutiny annual report. I'll just briefly go through if I can get up on this machine. So for accuracy, page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. Are we happy they're accurate? Okay, I shall take them as read as accurate then. Thank you very much indeed. Public question time, item 5. I haven't received any public questions at all. So we're going to go straight on to item 6, which is the scrutiny of the Public Services Board. Can I welcome Councillor Andrea Lewis and the very long job title which he read out before. Also, Roger Thomas, the Chief Fire Officer. I don't know if Rob Stewart's with us or not. And Councillor Rob Stewart as well, Leader of the Council. And they're being supported by Ness Young, the Director of Corporate Services. I think Richard Rowlands is with us, and also Steve King, who's the Research Information GIS Team Leader. Andrea, do you want to sort of introduce this report? Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. I'll give just a very brief introduction. So the Public Service Board has certainly taken on board the previous comments and observations made by the Scrutiny Programme Committee on trying to better evidence the difference that the Public Service Board is making. The development of a new Public Service Board wellbeing plan provided the PSB with an opportunity to review how this is done. It was felt that for monitoring short-term delivery, an action plan that was clearer about intended outcomes and included success measures was probably a better and more holistic way to track performance than to develop a suite of performance indicators that may not be useful in measuring collective outcomes. However, identifying population-based indicators that could be localised might, although not perfect, be a better way to measure the collective work of partnerships over a longer period. This is still a work in progress, but I will hand over to Richard, who will be able to take you through the report, and then happy, along with colleagues, to take any questions.
Thank you, Andrea. Just acknowledge that we have Helen Gray and Jane Richmond with us as well. Richard, do you want to pick up the cudgel?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the report, it starts on page 13 of your papers, and it provides an update on the report that was presented to the committee back in October last year, and it provides an update on the work that's been undertaken since to develop a performance framework for the PSB. So if I can just point the committee to the paragraphs 2.1 to 2.4, which you can see on page 14. So that summarises the previous discussion on how performance meeting the wellbeing plan was reported in the past using highlight reports. And these didn't contain any performance measures for the reason that are set out, but in particular the PSB needed something a bit more specific in terms of what it was seeking to achieve in the short term, and then in the longer term, the outcomes that are going to be delivered collectively through the partnership, and that might be better measured using population-based indicators, especially where there might be some scope to localize what are sometimes regional or national measures collected by bodies such as the Office of National Statistics or Welsh Government. So with that in mind, in paragraphs 2.5 and 2.51 of the report, we can see there that the PSB has developed a framework which consists of an action plan for 2023-2024, which you can see attached at Appendix A starting on page 16. And you can see that it contains actions, some intended outcomes, the milestones that we're seeking to achieve, and also some success measures for each of the 8 steps which are identified in the wellbeing plan to deliver the wellbeing objectives. You can also see then that each of the steps has a strategic and an operational lead from each of the partners, but there's also a PSB delivery group which has been established with each of the operational leads attending to make sure that everything is integrated and that links are being made between the different steps that are being sort of actioned. So then, in addition to that, as I mentioned, the framework will consist of population level outcome measures and the monitoring arrangements to go with that as well. So some work has been undertaken to research and to map out some potential measures against the wellbeing objectives and also the drivers that are included in the wellbeing plan. And that has started. It's a work in progress, and you can see where we are with that at Appendix B, starting on page 35. Just in relation to those measures, those population level indicators. So the initial work so far has looked at the existing and the established national indicators and other measures in use that are related to wellbeing in Wales and the links to the drivers which are included in the wellbeing plan. And you can see those drivers listed on pages 36 and 37. And in relation to those national measures, we've got 2 main sources that we've looked at to date. So first of all, the national wellbeing indicators, and you can see those on pages 38 and 39. And secondly, we've also looked at what are called the Thriving Places Index for Wales, which was developed by Data Cymru and the Centre for Thriving Places, and you can see them on pages 40 and 41. Then on pages 42 to 47, we have a number of tables that seek to link the wellbeing plan drivers to the national indicators and to the Thriving Place measures. And then you can see all of that summarized on pages 58 to 66. So what we have there is basically a synthesized list of each of the individual primary and secondary drivers in the wellbeing plan linked against the Thriving Places indicators and the national measures as well. And that's what that's so far in terms of how we've done that. So you'll see that some of the indicators, they sometimes appear more than once against different drivers or outcomes. And for a number of drivers, there are as of yet, no links identified to any national indicator or Thriving Place measure. The relationship between the drivers and these measures is not always obvious and will also be open to interpretation. And so the PSB delivery group that I mentioned earlier, which consists of the operational leads for each of the 8 steps in the wellbeing plan, they've been engaged on this piece of work and they will review it further and will share it with their colleagues who might have alternative measures to offer or might have a different view or perspective or further comments and suggestions to make. But in the end, what we want to arrive at is an agreed and common view on the links between the wellbeing plan drivers and the identified indicators. So in terms of where we go next with this, we've got some further work to do on the indicators and their suitability for use within the framework. So that includes considerations around data availability, the reliability of data or the data source, the frequency of reporting, the local availability of data and so on. So the different considerations that we have to take into account. And we also have to consider that while some of the measures, particularly the Thriving Place Index measures, are in many cases established and are from recognisable sources. Some may only feed into that model and will not be readily or independently available. So we're also looking at alternative measures beyond these two sources, particularly any that are already been used in some way by the partners themselves and that they fit the criteria. They can also be considered as well, particularly around those drivers where the number of national indicators or thrive in place measures is more limited. Although again, any additional measures, we have to have that test about them being sufficiently robust and based on similar quality and suitability considerations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Anybody else want to? I think Andrew, do you want to come back? Or? Okay. Any other colleagues want to comment at all? No, not at the moment. Oh, yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Particularly within step 4, which is my responsibility of making Swansea safe and more cohesive. I think, Chair, we've taken the views, particularly from Scrutiny panel previously, in terms of, if I could put it, wouldn't this have happened anyway type sort of approach, and what added value is the PSB. We've taken that feedback previously, which I think was fair and valid. And we have taken a totally different approach this year in terms of very much visual engagement events. Just finished one today, actually. Just rushed up from, that's why I was just 5 minutes before the meeting. And that was a walking in your shoes event, which we've held down at Earlswood at our training site. We brought partners together and we've explored opportunities there for collaborative working. We spelt out what a modern fire and rescue service does, what it provides, and a lot of learning has come out of that. Plus, look for opportunities where we can work closer together with partners. We have a number of partnerships already set up, but we're looking at how we can interact not only with ourselves, but bringing partners together into that space as well. Back at the start of June, we had we sort of piggybacked the Firefighter Fitness Challenge in the middle of Swansea. We took the opportunity then to bring partners together into Community Safety Village. So again, a visual event, a lot of footfall, a lot of engagement with the public. So, and we have a further event now scheduled on safeguarding, with a focus on safeguarding during Safeguarding Week at the middle of November in the Swansea.com stadium. So we've really taken the opportunity now to be far more engaged out there, engaging with partners, getting people together and speaking in that space, in that collaborative space, looking for opportunities to develop work further. So hope you'll see we've tried to take an innovative and a different approach in terms of addressing some of the issues that were raised previously, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And can I thank you for taking on board the urgings of this committee over the last few years and actually producing an action plan. Having seen that, I don't want to sound difficult at all. It does, when you look at Appendix A, it shows most of the actions are in green. And for each of the 8 wellbeing steps, which is good, but we're mindful that green does not necessarily mean complete. It means on track. So while this appears positive, do you think that are these actions sufficiently challenging, do you think, or is this just challenging just producing the action plan itself? Andrea.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. Yes, we absolutely have taken on board the comments of this committee to better evidence the difference that the PSB is making. In response, following the development of the new 2040 wellbeing plan, the PSB have developed an action plan for 2023-24 to identify tangible actions that the PSB could take under each of the 8 steps that will contribute to the long-term objectives which have been identified in the plan. PSB partners agreed that we should identify at least 2 actions for each step. One focused on an action that would have an immediate impact on an issue that was identified in the wellbeing assessment, and one focused on a preventative action that would help contribute to the objective over the longer term. Developing a performance management framework was one of the actions in the plan. The framework includes the development of annual action plans with milestones and success measures, together with regular performance reports to the formal PSB meetings. Hopefully, the committee will agree that the action plan demonstrates that the PSB is not just a talking shop. And in the first 6 months of the 23-24, the PSB has started developing an early years and maternity for Swansea region, facilitated a stakeholder event and facilitated the development of a human rights city action plan, secured funding for the development of an independent adaptation and mitigation strategy for the city, which is due to be advertised on Sell to Wales imminently, a pop-up community village that Roger referenced during the Welsh Firefighters Fitness Challenge, and development of a governance map of all partnerships across the region. As the committee has recognised in the past, it's incredibly challenging to demonstrate the specific contributions of PSBs as distinct from other partnerships across the region, or indeed individual organisations. While the action plan allows us to demonstrate tangible outputs, we are also trying to develop a set of population outcome measures that can help the PSB track the contribution it's making over the long term. Appendix B is an exercise undertaken by officers to map possible outcome measures that could be used, considering relevant national indicators and those of individual PSB members to try and optimise alignment. The next stage of this work will be to consider which outcome measures would be impacted by the steps in the wellbeing plan to enable us to develop a specific set for the PSB, which will be monitored over the next 17 years. And if I could just also point out, we do plan to have regular updates, as I've mentioned, on all 8 steps at the Public Service Board meetings. The recording of the Public Service Board, which was held last Thursday, is available if Scrutiny Programme Committee members wish to watch it, where all the updates were received by the committee, and therefore, if they're of interest to Scrutiny Programme Committee, I recommend you watch it. And we plan to have those regular updates at all of our formal PSB meetings going forward. And again, I'd encourage committee members' attendance so that they can get the live updates as the committee receives them.
You'll note I didn't actually use the term talking shop at all, my question. Roger.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Andrea. Yeah, just to add to that, I think it's worth noting that partnership working, collaborative working did not start with PSBs. It's a lot of these things are already in progress under the old auspices of the LSBs, or just general informal and formal partnerships that extend across all public sector organisations. So very much if I talk in a fire service context, we are always looking for opportunities where we can share locations, we can share training, we can share resources, and address some of the community needs through collaborative working. So I think that's worthy of note. What I would urge the scrutiny panel to do is to look at opportunities where you come and take the opportunity to look at the work we're doing. I know certainly Councillor Jones was there at the event in June in Swansea, and engaged and supported, as he always does, in terms of fire service events. We opened open invitation to the scrutiny to the Walking in Your Shoes event to all scrutiny members as well today. Appreciate that not everybody can make every event, but on the 17th of November, the safeguarding event that we hold in the Swansea.com stadium is an open invitation to scrutiny members, so you can see firsthand, I think, in terms of the engagement that's going on. And also the last point probably I'd made, and I think I have made before, is around the challenging around funding. There is no hypothecated or ring-fenced funding associated with public services boards. And as money becomes tighter in the public sector and organisations retract into their sort of statutory duty, it is increasingly challenging, I think, to engage some of this work over and above. So it's just, I know we all understand that, and it's just worthy of note as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Ness, you wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to say, I think just to recognise that the wellbeing plan is a new plan for 23 to 28, and the objectives that are set in that are actually take us up to 2040. So I think it's understandable that in this first year action plan that many of the activities are kind of starting big pieces of work, and so may not seem that ambitious of themselves. But if we look, for example, of the creation of the early years strategy, or indeed the adaptation strategy that's due to be procured shortly, those are 2 really significant pieces of work, and so, but they will take longer than 1 year to come to fruition. And so I think what scrutiny will see is next year, when we look at the 24-25 plan and then 25-26, some more substantive and tangible actions coming forward as we seek to pursue those objectives, which, as I say, are long term.
Thanks, Ness. I understand it's early years, early doors. In terms of what we have in front of us, though, which is the most challenging action you think is in that list?
I think both of the two that I mentioned in terms of the early years transformation and the climate change actions are probably the most challenging for us as a PSB, because both will require significant long-term commitment from all partners to ensure their successful delivery. I think also Human Rights City is another which has really far-reaching but significant implications for organisations, because it's about embedding changing practices within organisations. So I think those three are very strategic and challenging objectives. Some of the steps 6 to 8 are very much about building the capacity of the Public Service Board to improve its governance and to better identify opportunities to work together. And that's something which Scrutiny has commented on in the past.
Is the early year ones, is that a funding issue, or is that just really getting people coming together to do things?
It's potentially both. I mean, I think at the first, given that the PSB doesn't have any additional resources as specifically to progress its actions, it's very much about working across organisations to identify what work we can do collectively and how we can best use our base budget resources to pursue those objectives over time.
Okay, thanks for that. Mike White, you've got a question as well? That's Mike, there he is.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the Chief also obviously touched on the question I looked under the on page 25 regarding step 4. What I would like to know, the cabinet member can let us know, or possibly Mr. Thomas, if we can perhaps roll out these pop-up community events to all areas across the city, county Swansea, and utilise the use of our council buildings, because people living in those communities then will have the opportunity to attend these very, very important services that are being provided. I can remember we used to have the Crucial Cruise, which was very, very successful at one time in Swansea. So just wondering whether the PSB could perhaps look to reintroduce that sort of area of service. Thank you, Chair.
Roger, I think you want your firemen demonstrating their fitness all over the city of Swansea.
Yeah. I think the firefighter fitness challenge was just a vehicle that we sort of piggybacked on, but yeah, I'm whatever it'll do to get the community safety messages across. I think what we've done in terms of the pop-up village was to prove a concept, really, to bring partners together, to engage in that communal space, and to take advantage of. And we are very grateful to the local authority in terms of supporting and facilitating the event in the city centre in the same way that it does in the sort of Christmas market, same sort of location, but it allowed us, like I say, to engage. It does help the weather, especially when you plant it outside, but we were able to sort of engage, a number of members of the public in terms of footfall and to get our key messages across. I think that model can be replicated, and we do already replicate it in a number of arenas. When we had the emergency services event, with the air show, obviously we're in those spaces as well. But if this is a proof of concept, and we would want to, certainly we were looking to utilize the fitness challenge on an annual basis. It's a perfect venue. In the centre of Swansea, really good for the city in terms of engaging, because we have people coming, teams from across the UK. It's really good to showcase the city and what it can offer. So there's that benefit as well. But also, if we can use that model, and use that and replicate that across in other events, from a fire service perspective, we will always support that type of community event. We have a team, we have facilities, we have pop-up stalls, anything we can do to support that. So this is very much proof of concept this year. We were looking to extend that next year, and not only providing a pop-up village in the Welsh Firefighters Fitness Challenge, should it be run in Swansea, but also any other events that we could look to extend this work as well. So thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, it occurs to me, because I think when we discussed your initial consultation, there was an issue about the number of people who responded to, but it seems to me that if you're going to hold more events around the city, you can make use of that to sort of get people's views on various issues which you want to look at as well. Yeah, Roger.
Yeah, I think public consultation is a real challenge. It's a challenge for all of us in the public sector in terms of getting people to engage. I'm not sure what the reasons behind that are. I think sometimes if I can put it in a sort of negative sense, if you're trying to remove something or close something or whatever, then clearly you get a different type of engagement and very focused and very perhaps local in that sense. I would say, and we sit in the fire service, Mid and West Wales, we sit across 6 local authority areas, so 6 PSBs, and the response is not particularly great across any of them for those very reasons. I don't think we're out to kilter. It's not a reason or an excuse, but it is a challenge to get people to consult and to respond.
Yeah, I think because you are so strategic, people tend to respond to things which they can see and feel, which have concrete outcomes. So they're more likely to respond to a consultation on reducing the speed limit to 20 miles per hour than they are to a consultation on the well-being of the city of Swansea, I suppose, which is unfortunate, but that's the reality we're all facing, isn't it? Anybody else got any questions at all? Lyndon.
Yeah, a couple of things. I think before we were worried about engagement, and I can remember asking the question. Certainly, I attended, as Roger mentioned, the pop-up community village in June, and it was excellent. And a lot of people were engaging with the stalls there, and I think that is obviously good. And it may be a way that you get people to engage when they visit those stalls. Perhaps you have a sort of a survey form at those stalls, and that might be the way, forward. I was looking at the list of actions, and gosh, quite a few. The only thing I would say is sometimes less is more, and what are the top priorities really, rather than have a complete long list. I always like tick lists because unless you got them on the list, they're never going to happen in any case. So I always have an action list. And but the ones at the top are the important ones that you can actually get and easy wins really. But as I say, and sometimes less is more. But well done on engagement. But I would possibly use those events, and I've booked up to go to the event in Swansea.com already for November.
Okay, Andrea.
Yes, thank you. We certainly take on board, any community events, using those to actively engage with the people of Swansea. Absolutely. In terms of the action plan and the steps, they may seem like they're quite a number of them, but actually, as Ness has pointed out, they're very targeted and very focused. And you'll see that the step leads are across the Public Service Board partners. So it's not just council leading on it. NRW, Health, and the Fire Service and ourselves are working very closely together. And you'll see a number of partners online today as well who are the step leads. So it seems like a big piece of work, but there are different organisations leading on each step. So it's fairly shared out. And as we've mentioned, step 6 to 8 are largely led in terms of improving the governance and the measuring and the progress, which Richard outlined in his introduction as well. So I feel we've got the balance right. We have actually narrowed it down to what we felt were the PSB's priorities, and we'll continue to build on that. But as Ness referred to it, we're in year 1. We're looking to see progress snowball and build as we go through, and it is a plan that we need to recognise, which takes us to 2040. So there is time.
Thank you for that. Anybody else got any questions or points they want to make? No? I feel like we've made significant progress today and a really good start. So I think we'll be looking forward to monitoring this action plan and how it develops itself over time. And maybe you can, as you sort of focus it more and refine it, hopefully will help us as well in terms of scrutinising what the Public Service Board does. So thank you very much for coming to present it, and all the various stakeholders who've accompanied you as well. So thank you very much for that. Thanks. Thank you. Right, item 7 is the pre-decision scrutiny for the Oracle project closure process and transition to a new operating model. Andrea is staying for this as the Cabinet Member for Service Transformation. We have Ness Young again, Director of Corporate Services, and Sarah Lackenby, Head of Digital and Customer Services. Andrea, you're going to just introduce this? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, I'm extremely pleased to report that the Oracle Fusion system went live as promised in April. I'm sure Scrutiny will remember the smooth and successful first payroll run in April, so all went very well. It's not to be underestimated, though, the size and scale of the system. 13 modules have been delivered, covering HCM, finance, supply chain management and payroll. This has been no mean feat, and I do want to pay tribute to Ness, Sarah Lackenby, and the in-house digital team who've worked closely with department leads across the council and also with our partners, Oracle and Infosys, to deliver this on time and on budget. The system is stable and is working well. However, we did have some teething issues since go live, most of them related to integrations and how Fusion links with other systems. Most of these integration issues, are now largely resolved, with only one issue left, which is going live shortly. So the last issue is the iConnect, which links Fusion into the pension system, and that should be resolved over the coming weeks. Section 2 of the report shows how the project has delivered against the original objectives, as well as examples of some of the benefits of the new Fusion system. Key drivers in the original report were around mitigating the risk of the old system being end of life and improving security and resilience, which have all been achieved. We have remained in hypercare until the critical issues are resolved, and once the final integration is fixed, we will transition into the new Oracle operating model and close the project. So it will effectively become business as usual. The previous project board will be replaced by the new Fusion Change Board to oversee any changes and change requests to the system or new developments. The expenditure and financing can be seen in the financial implications at Appendix B. So just to conclude, I'm pleased to say it's been delivered on time and within the approved budget extensions, and I'm very happy to take any questions, but I do have Sarah, Ness, and also the leader, and hopefully Ben Smith has joined us. Yes, he has, online. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you and welcome, Ben. Okay, thank you. Given that the report now confirms the total project costs at just under £13.2 million compared to the original budget of 4.8 million in 2019, what are your thoughts on this? Is this a significant increase? And have we got value for money out of that?
So perhaps if I can start with the response, and I think the leader will want to add to it as well. It's probably close to 7 million of additional costs that can be directly attributed to the impact of the pandemic. 6.1 million asked to Welsh Government, but the additional resources in finance from underspends take to nearer 7 million, with the remainder arising from the development opportunities that emerged during the project's implementation. So to increase the number of individual costs of licenses, requirements for 2 additional test environments, changes requested by Swansea Council, requests for additional reports, and as such, while the total cost of the project was much more than originally intended, we could not have predicted nor mitigated the impact of the pandemic, and we now have an ERP which is fit for purpose and fit for the future. I'm happy to hand off to the leader.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Lewis has articulated that beautifully. I think that the point I would make here is clearly now we've been out of the pandemic for 2 years. It seems long in the distance, and we've probably forgotten how difficult some of those times were, especially for big deliveries like this. Because remember, we weren't only dealing with the impacts of COVID in this country, we were dealing with the impacts of COVID in the countries where some of our support and some of the operational organisations were based. So as we outlined in a previous scrutiny, you know, if you rip out the costs directly associated with the COVID pandemic itself, which, as you know, we've sought to recover from Welsh Government but have been unsuccessful in doing so, then the project is within its very, very close, in fact, not within its original budget. And, you know, I would be much more concerned if there were a situation whereby costs had got out of control and there were no links to specific reasons to explain that. So again, you know, as part of perhaps the critical role of scrutiny, you will have seen all of the options that we considered at the time, including things like, you know, potentially stopping the project, doing away with the abortive works. All of those things, I guess, could be considered. We went for the best option, and I don't think there was any other option available to us, given the dramatic and unprecedented circumstances surrounding COVID, that would have allowed us to do anything other than proceed and to obviously accommodate the additional costs related to the COVID delay. Again, I want to place on record my thanks to all of the teams that worked through that very, very difficult period to make sure that we did get a new technical platform and systems out at the end of it. I think we're in a much better technical position now than we otherwise would have been, because, of course, had we have not proceeded to complete the transformation and migration, then we would still have had the legacy systems and still have had the legacy costs and charges that we were trying to move away from. So I think you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and I think if there's anybody who could put their hands up and say we knew that COVID was coming, I think they would be a healthy dose of salt taken with that statement. But I do genuinely, in all seriousness, I think we have to, and I would hope everybody on this call would pay tribute to the work done by the officers to make sure we got a successful delivery out of this, and you know, able to do so as well with still around £500,000 being able to be placed now in a specific reserve to help with follow-on activities.
Okay, we'll come back to the £500,000 in a minute. So you take the COVID costs out, I think we're about 2.3 million over what the original budget was, which, as you say, given the circumstances, is better. Sorry, Andrea, yes.
Sorry, Chair, I just wanted to point out as well that members will be more than aware of another council, an English authority, where proportionately their implementation of the Oracle Fusion system cost £100 million. And I understand that proportionally they're a larger authority than us, but even if you look at it pro rata, we still did extremely well in terms of the budget cost for implementation.
Nobody is saying that introducing ICT systems is easy. And we've all had experience of doing that in all different ways. So no one is saying it's easy at all. Mike, did you want to comment on the costs? I think you said so in the pre-meeting, I think.
Yeah, I would have thought the plus the cabinet member would be surprised to see obviously the 500,000 more or less as a savings. I know contingency there, but you know, I probably, and I suppose that they were probably pleased to see that in the event of what we just said about all the impact of COVID, you know. And that the project more or less has come in online, or taking that 500,000 is going to be, but more or less it would have come in under budget.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. Yes, absolutely, very pleased to see £500,000 going back to the centre in a earmarked reserve. We did collectively, Sarah, Ness, myself and the team, watch the budget and monitor it very closely throughout the duration of the project. And we're watching the contingency pot very closely. So pleased that we didn't have to dip into that and that it's gone back to the centre.
I'm going to come on to the £500,000 now, because obviously you have that money there, which give you some comfort, I think, in the future. But para 5.5 in the report refers to an unknown cost of changes. And at para 5.6, you say, in addition, there'll be changes to Oracle licensing, which is likely to incur additional costs. Oracle is supporting the council review of licenses. Just recommend that any subsequent additional current year license costs are funded from the contingency, which is fair enough. But I think we do have some concerns about the sort of costs which these license changes might impose on the council. Are they going to be contained within the £500,000? And what's the implications for future budgets of license? Because licensing of this scale is not cheap. And clearly, I think that there are concerns that contingency may not be sufficient to contain them, and that there will be on costs for future budgets. Yes, so yeah, Leader.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think good, very, very good question, and similar discussion we had really at Cabinet around this.
Yeah.
I think Ness and the team have had to grapple with the fact that there are currently additional license costs, which are partly resulting in the fact that we now have more remote workers, with more people accessing on different devices. But that comes at a cost for us, but it's a reflection of the fact that the world changed after COVID. One of the things that we'll need to do, Ness will use some of that 500,000 this year just to make sure that the additional in-year license costs that are coming up are dealt with. And then we've got a decision to make as an administration about how we incorporate and reflect that into ongoing budgets, because it is a reality that we will probably carry, the license costs into future years. So it's a fair point, and it's one we've already acknowledged, and that will be dealt with. I think the other point is in terms of not being able to absolutely know the cost of change requests. Well, again, we would expect a brand new platform with the dynamic systems and all the linkages to other systems to require further changes as we go forward. As you know, we've in-housed a lot of the work that was previously outsourced to multinational companies. And that will mean that Ness and her team require a change budget to be able to do the necessary works to complete those changes, so that our systems stay up to date, and that any work that's required is undertaken efficiently and probably at the best value we can get it. So again, it's making some provision for that and giving Ness and the team the financial resilience to go forward without needing to come back for additional requests.
So just following on from that, do we have an understanding of the cost of, for example, adding additional profiles to the system in terms of licenses? And in terms of the changes, are we confident that any changes which might come in will be given sufficient lead-in time so we are able to identify budgets to pay for those changes?
I'll let Ness or Sarah or Andrea pick up the technical point on that. But yes, I mean, I think we've got a change programme in place, Chair, that ensures that we have a forward look and planned changes are built into that programme. So there shouldn't be a position where we're heading into a place where we're requiring a change that we've not either planned for or that we can't afford.
Yeah, Ness?
Sorry, I was on mute. Sarah might want to come in with a bit more detail here, but basically we work with Oracle to review our position on licenses. It's a very dynamic process, as you can imagine, with 13 different modules. There are different elements to the license in terms of which users need which licenses, are changing staff numbers. So it's quite a complex process that we go through in terms of getting a definitive position at each year as to what our total license costs are, and that process is ongoing at the moment. But as the leader and Andrea have said already, in terms of this year's costs, we do not expect it to exceed that contingency budget, and we'll continue to work with Oracle in the normal way in terms of understanding and planning future year Oracle license costs. In terms of the change requests, there will be likely future requests, which will not only be around tweaking the existing system, but also looking at potential opportunities for further transformation in the future. And so the contingency budget will help us to ensure that we can able to make those changes where we can see that it's optimizing efficiency and improving the functionality of the system. And we'll need in the future, as this is a cloud-based system, and it will survive or be operational for 10-20 years potentially, there will be future opportunities to make changes to the system as we go through our own transformation journey across the council.
Okay, Sarah, do you want to come in?
Yes, just in terms of the process. So there is a fusion change board moving forward in the new model. So and on there sit representatives from across the council as well. So when there is a change that comes forward, it'll be there'll be a business case that goes with it, so that services can then talk about how it can be funded, but also the priority of that work as well. So that's going to how we're going to manage it ongoing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chris Holly.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The paragraph 5.7 it said about Welsh audits recommended that we don't use capital receipts. That's I can well understand that now, having listened to the explanations given. So then we've used the capital equalisation fund to have the revenue to put into it. Do you envisage listening to what Sarah said and what Ness said, it's plainly obvious, and having a bit of history attached to some IT projects, that they tend to be, and with inflation as it is now, they tend to go up every year in disproportionate to what we have. Will the equalisation fund be used for that, or are we going to build into the various budgets, which Sarah just said, build into current budgets what those IT licenses are likely to be and what the operational costs are going to be? Because it does seem to me that there could be some disparity between the costs and the licenses and what have you as we go forward.
Andrea? Oh, Ben.
Probably best I come in on that one, and
Yeah.
I recognise entirely what Councillor Holly has said. My starting premise would be not to give advice to use the capital equalisation reserve going forward for any of those revenue pressures. As others have already said, the intention would be that there are risks and those pressures will be accommodated in the short term through the contingency sum on the Oracle project implementation and going forward as a normal budget risk as part of revenue. The reason I changed tack, as it were, originally when you do a capital project or a project of a capital nature, and as others have said, this is a investment in a system that would last 10 to 20 years. So could be argued to have created an intangible asset, and that's why originally we did explore with Audit Wales whether we could use some capital receipts on it. It just frankly wasn't worth the risk of having the challenge. The way it works is it's my decision to give the technical advice on accounting, and then Audit Wales would review it. So they don't directly tell me not to do it, but in discussions with them, I did tend to agree with them that because this is a sort of ongoing licensing model, it's a bit like owning digital copies of MS Office versus Office 365 on a licensing model, and effectively it was just so much safer to do it from revenue. And because, as you correctly identified, Councillor Holly, the capital equalisation reserve is there, and effectively that is a revenue reserve used to smooth costs of capital, whilst effectively we didn't treat it as capital, it achieved the same net effect. So I treat the lump sum costs as solely coming from that capital equalisation reserve, because otherwise they're very distorting to revenue. If you spend 10, 11, 12 million pounds and you're forced to charge it to revenue in 1 year, it does feel a little bit unfair if you're getting 10 to 20 years worth of benefits, and that's why ordinarily you would capitalise things. But I don't think it would be an appropriate use going forward for the capital equalisation reserve. We will look to build it in once we have resolved those uncertainties with Oracle into base licensing costs, and recognising that, yes, they do tend to have inflationary pressures on them. That's a much better way of doing it. But that was what the relevance of reflecting it was. I just didn't feel it was worth taking the risk of challenge when we had a ready-made source. One I'd like to have conserved, because if I can spend on capital, I will conserve CER to be flexible, but it was just safer to do that. But you're absolutely right to ask that question, and the answer is no to CER. It will be from base revenue budgets, and as the leader and others have commented on, it's part of the decisions the administration will take on officer advice as they're finalising and formalising next year's and future years' budgets. Thank you.
Okay,
So
Chris?
so actually the capitalization fund or the equalization fund will be there, but listen to what you said, Ben. The reality of the ongoing licensing and the ongoing on cost going on to revenue, does that mean then that the revenue costs will have to be in a baseline subject, a baseline core subject, a core policy within the various disciplines. So in highways and in social services and what have you. So the base cost will include the new whatever licenses there will be. There will not be an increase or whatever.
So I can't be certain there won't be increases. I can't give that assurance, but if there are increases, effectively we will make arrangements for sufficient budgets being provided centrally for these large scale systems. I think the point you're getting at is that individual service directorates wouldn't be disadvantaged where they're using Oracle. If it's a service specific development they want, now that we've used up the Oracle Development Fund, it might be something that services have to pay for if they want further enhancements and developments going forward. But the intention would be that, a bit like a large number of items we do, we act as the corporate landlord on a whole raft of things, and we would make arrangements for the costs to be provided centrally. So basically, it's to make sure that officers give sufficient advice to members to make sure sufficient is available to Sarah and Ness to facilitate the base functionality of the system. If there are particular service enhancements required, we do reserve the right to expect services that might benefit from that to pay for it going forward. But that's up for debate in due course.
Yeah, so it's basically what you're saying is if there's an efficiency saving on it, use that. If not, then come back to the, yeah, okay. Well, thank you.
And just to clarify, what you're saying is that individual departments will only be charged if they want to make some innovations. Otherwise, there won't be any recharges to individual departments internally for this. Like
exactly, our intention is we aim not to do recharging and internal charging for shops where we can avoid it. It is a valid model for doing, but it takes a lot of time to do it. But yes, it will be done on a case by case basis. I mean, Sarah manages a whole raft of IT projects, and there is some development fund monies available, but they are very, very finite, and they would be weighed accordingly. But yes, it's not the intention that we would look to pass things on directly to services. The important thing is to make sure we provide sufficient in the first place in the base budget to facilitate the costs and the attendant risks that have been highlighted by others. There are those risks in terms of inflationary pressures and the overall licensing, and it is something that we're keeping a very close eye on as part of the budget discussions. And we hope to have them resolved in time for them to be fully accommodated within the budget. If not, I will continue to give officer advice to maintain sums for contingency and some amounts for central inflation to de-risk some of the risks which we have on a whole raft of items where we are at the vagaries of the market and suppliers to some extent.
Okay, thanks, Ben. And just for, I think, Sarah Ness's question, is it 10 years or 20 years? Which is it? The life of this project? Sarah?
It's actually longer than that. We were having this discussion. So, I mean, I think I said at last scrutiny, the patches that we get now through quarterly and the developments that Oracle do on the system, with it being a global system used by many organizations, with it being cloud, incremental developments are always happening. So where you used to, in the past, used to have to go through major upgrades, those days are gone now. Really, it's growing incrementally. So actually, it's actually beyond 20 years. I mean, it's infinite to a certain extent. And also Oracle work with a public sector user group as well. So there's councils across the whole of the UK that are on Oracle that come together to talk about developments that they would like to make, and Oracle listen to that and then put it into their development cycle. So they're not only developing the product globally, but they're developing it particularly for the public sector as well. So we anticipate actually it's beyond 20 years probably.
And presumably we're paying Oracle on a regular basis. Paying Oracle on a regular basis to ensure we get those patches and those upgrades coming through.
It's part of the licensing contract. So yes, it's part of what happens. It's actually mandatory. So we have to do the patches quarterly. You can actually only defer one of them per year. They are mandatory, and you do have to do them, especially the year-end patching for obviously all the legislative updates that they bring into the system, and that keeps it fresh and up to date. So yes, it's part of our package that we already buy.
Are you anticipating those patches causing any disruption to the availability of systems at the time?
No, they shouldn't do. And the patching cycle is also much quicker as well than the previous patching that we used to do. So we're hoping that that there shouldn't be any issues with those. And we get full inventory before the patch happens of all the changes that are likely to be made, so we can assess beforehand exactly what's going to happen and what the implications might be, so we can then test that out with any other integration. So our anticipation is no, because we get that inventory beforehand.
Okay, because the previous system, the redundant system, was it 12 to 13 years or something it lasted? Yeah, I thought it was, yeah.
Yeah, and it also had some major upgrades in its time.
I
as
know
well,
it did,
so
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
which were difficult at the time as well.
Yeah, disruptive, yeah. Okay, what sort of feedback have we had from the staff about this new system at all? Have they had positives, or have they difficulties with this, or have we had much feedback at all on the new system?
So where we've had, as I've mentioned in the report, we have obviously had some issues where there's been integration with other systems. That has caused some difficulty for some services while they've been waiting for those to be fixed. But I think where people haven't been impacted by that, we've had some very positive feedback. People who are using it on a day-to-day basis to raise purchase orders and invoices, book annual leave, all sorts of things that they're doing with the put the goals and performance in, do training. We've had some quite good positive impact from the staff. They've fed back that they find the system very modern. That I think a lot of the people have found it, especially around finance and the general ledger team, have found some of the key functionality to be able to do some of their work very good, and also some of those big cross-council reports that people run have been very quick and much easier to do than with the previous system. So yeah, I think where there's been integration issues, understandably, staff have found that very problematic for their day-to-day working. But now that they're fixed, moving forward, I'm hoping that that feedback will also improve.
Okay, thanks. Chris, you want to come back in?
Yeah, Tris, can I ask you a question about the training? It's funny you should say about that, but is all the training that we've done, and I mean not just councillors, I mean staff as well, has that been transferred to the Oracle system? Because I've been told in many cases it's been lost and you've got to start all over again to do all the safeguard training and other training as well that members and employees have had.
Just be clear, you're talking about the training records as opposed to training on the system. Yeah.
Our previous e-learning platform was obviously a different platform. So there was certain elements on Oracle in terms of recording key sort of health and safety training, but generally it was a different platform for e-learning. So yes, in terms of migration, we weren't able to migrate over all the records, and some people have to start again with some of the records. However, it's significantly more comprehensive what we now have on Oracle, and it will then send out automatic reminders as well, so that now that people will have done the training, it will automatically, moving forward, send out automatic reminders and book people automatically onto courses. So it's significantly better, albeit initially, because of the older system, we did have some challenges with the older system in getting some of the records out. So and it's also helpful in terms of us training our external partners as well, that obviously work with us in some of our collaborative environments.
Okay, Ness, you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. So just to say, as Sarah said, the new system is much more robust than the previous system. So there was not only a challenge in terms of transferring some of the data, but actually the veracity of that data. We weren't necessarily confident that those records were complete. And just reassurance, Chris, on the safeguarding, actually the safeguarding training, we have just launched a new safeguarding training course, which everybody needs to complete. So even if people had done the old one, we have just launched a new one. So everybody is going to need to complete that. And that is a stated priority from corporate management team to ensure that that's done as quickly as possible by all the staff that need to do it across the council. But we have got a lot more confidence in the new Oracle module for training and the data that it will provide than we certainly had in the old system.
Yeah, the thing about training is it does have a use by date, doesn't it?
Thank you.
Okay, I got one more question in terms of corporate risk and governance issues. What risks remain alive relevant to this project and the transition to the new operating model? I know you said there's one module which is still in transition. Have we got any identifiable risks in the risk register in terms of going forward on this system?
I think one of the key risks is managing the capacity across business teams, because obviously if there's changes to be made that they'd like to make in the system, it's the ongoing issue of trying to manage innovation and business as usual side by side, which is, I think, is a common problem generally across the council, but also with any project. I think it's not just this one, but I think hopefully with what we're doing with the Fusion Change Board and how we can then help prioritise services work alongside that and looking at timescales, then we should be able to do it. But that's probably the risk around capacity within services is probably the one carrying forward.
Okay, Andrea?
Yes, and if I could come back specifically on the last area of risk that you were talking about, the last module that we're working on, we are hopeful that that will be resolved in the next few weeks. And so there isn't necessarily a high risk around that. That is in truck, it's being dealt with now. So once that is the final piece of the puzzle, if you like, we can then come out of hypercare and move on to business as usual.
So people are still getting their pensions being paid to them? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Glad to hear that. I think you would have heard if they hadn't been. Anybody got any more questions at all they want to ask on this? Francesca, sorry. Francesca, is she there?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I know maybe going one step backwards, but it was just while everybody was talking. I appreciate COVID probably did push up the costs on everything and supply and demand, but just out of interest, and this may be obvious, maybe I am missing it. What was it with the cost that did push it up? Was it sort of, I don't know, is it companies? Because I appreciate it's an IT system, it's cloud-based, and I'm no expert. Is it that the product itself went up in price, or do we know? Like I said, I didn't know if there's anything directly linked to the actual cost, what specifically went up. Thank you.
And so,
Yeah, because the project extended in time, then we had to have everybody working on the project longer. So not only was that external suppliers had to work on it longer, but also then our own staff who were seconded into it had to work on it longer. So it was really the length of time that was then expanding it, because we had to have everybody engaged much longer in time.
I understand we were transferring staff to all sorts of things with COVID as well. Yeah. Do you need to come in, Andrea? No, I've just said it for you. Yeah, I think it was in the last time we scrutinised this came up as well. Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. Anybody else got any questions at all? Who's that? No other questions? Okay, can I thank you again for coming? I'm most probably be coming to Cabinet just to give you feedback on this, and which you know is fine. So I think our main concern lies around the future licensing and stuff, which we'll reflect in the letter to you as well. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on then to item 8, which is the Scrutiny Performance Panel Progress Report. And this month is the Education Scrutiny Performance Panel. Lyndon has graced us with his presence in person to introduce this report. Lyndon, would you like to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think the progress report on education scrutiny is included in your pack. Key elements of the work is that it's important we act as a critical friend, but one who wants the best for pupils in Swansea, and I think that is quite key, and that is something the panel believe. We see education as a journey. We got the city deal. We want the best jobs, the right skills, and we want well-paid jobs. And we need to see that is reflected in what happens in school. We believe the key to it all is the new curriculum and how that is operating. We need to take all teachers with us on that journey. Otherwise, pupils are the ones that will suffer. And that is something we do raise on quite a regular basis. We look at children as well as an ongoing thing on free school meals, because they need to be looked after. It's our duty. The skills partnership that the council set up, that's the contact with business. So schools teach the right skills. And I think that's important, and that's embedded in the things that we look at. And it's also important that schools are part of the community. And I always remember Mike Dirk always says a school isn't an island, and it's a very good point, and it is neat. The other things, of course, we've looked at are school attendance, because coming out of COVID, it's really important that we see what we can do to maximise attendance in schools and also exclusion rates. You can see our programme. We do visits to schools to see what's happening on the ground, and I think that is really important, because very often when you do that visit, you can really see what's going on. We've had some cracking visits, and we've got one coming up this Thursday we're visiting Gorsinan Primary School, and we're looking at their school development plan. But as I say, you can see the programme. In January, we did an extremely useful meeting with the Pontedillas Comprehensive School earlier on this year, and we met up with every school in the cluster. That's the head and the chair of governors. And it was really useful to see how they came together, how they were learning from the experience, warts and all. It was really, really useful. And I did make a point afterwards to ring every school, because they'd given of their time, and I rang them, each of the schools, to say thank you. So we're doing that again in January, and we're looking at Gowden Comprehensive and their cluster this time. That's Gowden, Wenarlwyth, Llanryddion, Penclawdd, and Pen y Bro, which is Dunvant. So there's quite a comprehensive program of work, and I think I pay tribute to the panel for the fantastic work everybody is doing. We all just work together with one focus for the best for the pupils in Swansea, and we literally just get on with the job, and it really is fantastic to see. And I'd also like to place on record our thanks to the teachers and staff throughout Swansea, many of them who we've met during the course of this time, for the work they do.
Thank you, Lyndon. Just in terms of the new curriculum, have you had much feedback about how that's going at all?
Well, it can be a bit of a mixed bag, actually. In some schools, it's extremely good. In others, then it's a learning curve, but it's useful to get that cluster together so you can see how each school is learning from the other one. And I think that is really good. That's why we're looking at a different cluster in January. And I think that is important, because with the curriculum, key to it, as I said, is taking teachers with us as well, because the old curriculum, basically teachers were told what they had to do each term. The new one is not the case, and for a lot of teachers it's their wildest dream. But people who haven't been doing it ever like that before, it can be their nightmare, and it's not really fair on them as well. So we need to take those with us, and that is happening with this cluster working, and how they were sitting down and working through the problems together was a real good example. And I'm looking forward to the meeting in January to see how that is working through. But it's really important we keep on top of the new curriculum for the reasons I say. But yeah, Gorsinan School now on Thursday, and the other thing that I was quite keen we did, and that is cookery in schools, because we're looking at that, and Rodri Jones is actually coming back to the committee in November with a report, because if we are serious about cost of living, well, we need, if you look, I was behind somebody in one of the supermarkets and they were all buying all these ready meals. And really, what are we doing in schools to alter that? Basic cookery, so people can actually reduce the cost of cooking and actually produce much, much better food. Yeah, that'll be an interesting thing as well. So we've got, and we have had a full programme, and we have right through to the end of the year.
In terms of innovation for teachers, I mean, have we had a chance to look at the new additional learning needs regime at all? Which is
yes, we have. In fact, we looked at the ALN reform in June. And that is very much on our minds, and we do an annual update as well to make sure that we're up to speed with that, because that is really important.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else got any questions for Lyndon at all? No, can I thank you, Lyndon? The committee sounds really positive and very focused. That's really good. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, item 9 is membership of scrutiny panels and working groups. Couple of changes. The new community asset scrutiny inquiry panel, and we've got 12 councillors on that, and Councillor Stuart Rice is going to be the convener. And a change to the Child and Family Services Performance Panel. Councillor Cheryl Philpott has had to come off that panel. So yeah, so we'll hope maybe we can get somebody else on there to replace her. Okay. Yeah, are we agree with that? Yeah, okay. And then scrutiny work programme, item 10, which is the report is in front of you. Just to highlight the fact that the next meeting in November is going to be quite a busy one. We've got the annual corporate safeguarding report. We've got the Children and Young People's Rights Scheme annual report. We've got a follow-up on the bus services working group. And we've also got the antisocial behaviour scrutiny inquiry final report. Did I see something in the press about that or something? In the evening, in Wales Online, I think today. So that is coming to report to us as well. And what I read in the press, it looked like a very positive report indeed, with lots of recommendations. So I look forward to all that. But that's going to be a very busy report. And just a plug for the scrutiny training and development programme. The next sessions are going to be on the 31st of October and the 1st of November. Questioning skills for scrutiny, and that's a really important one. I did want a system, a session like that when I was an assembly member, which was really helpful. And I think I very much encourage members to go along to that session if they're able to, because it will be very good and very helpful, I think. Okay, date and time of upcoming performance scrutiny panels are all on the agenda, and the next meeting is the 14th of November. Unless anybody has anything they want to raise on those items. Can I thank you all very much then for attending? It's been a very helpful and very useful meeting, and thank you very much indeed. The meeting is now closed. Yes.
Thanks all. Bye.